Sometimes a simple act of kindness for a stranger can change not just one life, but to and even touch the heart of a billionaire. The diner was already noisy when Emily started her evening shift. The bell above the door kept ringing as customers came and went, and the smell of coffee and fried food filled the air. Emily moved quickly between tables, smiling even though her feet ached. It had been a long day, and she still had hours to go. Her back hurt from carrying trays, and she hadn't eaten since morning. But she kept working because she needed the money. Rent was due soon, and her mother's medicine wasn't cheap. Emily had learned to stay calm no matter how people treated her. Some customers were kind, but most were impatient or rude. A man had complained about his burger being too brown. Another woman had snapped her fingers at her like she was a dog. Emily smiled through all of it, the way she always did. Her manager, Mr. Coleman, was strict and always watching. If anyone made a mistake, he'd call them out in front of everyone. She tried to stay out of his way. It was almost closing time when the door opened again, and a small boy walked in. He couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. His face was pale, his eyes red, and he kept his head down. He wasn't with an adult. Emily noticed how everyone in the diner looked at him for a second, then went back to their food. The boy stood near the door, frozen, like he wasn't sure if he should be there. Emily went over and knelt beside him so she wouldn't scare him. "Hey there," she said softly. "You okay, sweetheart? You looking for someone?" The boy didn't answer. He just rubbed his eyes and shook his head. His clothes were clean but wrinkled, and his small hands trembled. Emily could tell something was wrong. She gently placed her hand on his shoulder and asked if he wanted to sit down. The boy nodded a little, so she guided him to the quiet booth in the far corner, away from the noise and curious stares. When she came back with a glass of water, he was sitting there staring at the table. "Here you go," she said with a smile, setting the glass down. "You look like you could use this." He mumbled a soft thank you, but still didn't look up. Emily wanted to ask where his parents were, but she didn't want to push. She decided to keep it light. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan," he said after a pause. His voice was small, almost a whisper. "Well, Ethan, I'm Emily. It's nice to meet you." She smiled again, but he didn't smile back. He looked tired and scared. Emily looked around to see if anyone had come in after him, maybe a parent or an older sibling, but no one had. The diner was getting quieter now as customers left. The manager gave her a look, silently telling her to hurry up with cleanup. But Emily couldn't leave the boy alone. She walked to the counter and poured a cup of hot chocolate, topping it with whipped cream. Then she grabbed a plate of pancakes from a canceled order. When she placed it in front of him, Ethan's eyes widened. "It's okay," Emily said quickly. "You don't have to pay for it. It's just something to warm you up." He stared at the food, then at her, unsure if he should touch it. "My dad says I shouldn't talk to strangers," he said quietly. "That's smart," Emily said kindly. "But I'm not a bad person. I'm just a waitress who makes pancakes taste better." Ethan looked at her for a moment, then picked up his fork and took a bite. His shoulders relaxed a little, and Emily could tell the warm food was helping. She sat across from him for a minute, just to keep him company. "You waiting for your dad?" she asked gently. He nodded. He was supposed to come, but maybe he forgot. His voice cracked when he said it, and he quickly looked away. Emily felt a lump in her throat. She wanted to hug him, but she knew she shouldn't. Instead, she said, "I'm sure he's just running late. Grown-ups are always running late." The boy nodded again, but didn't seem convinced. He picked at his pancakes, taking tiny bites. Emily noticed faint bruises on his wrist when his sleeve slipped down. She frowned. They looked fresh. She tried not to show her worry, but her mind was spinning. Was someone hurting this kid? Was he lost? Should she call the police? But what if she was wrong? She didn't want to scare him. The manager called out from the counter. "Emily, we're closing up. Let's go." 2 minutes, she said back, keeping her voice steady. He glared but didn't argue. Emily turned back to Ethan. "Hey, do you want me to call someone for you? Maybe your dad?" He shook his head quickly. "No, he's busy. He said not to bother him." "Okay," Emily said softly. She didn't press. "Do you want to stay here until he comes?" I'll be around cleaning up. You can just sit as long as you need." Ethan gave her a small nod. She smiled and went to wipe tables nearby, keeping an eye on him. Every few minutes, she glanced over to make sure he was still there. He sat quietly, drinking his hot chocolate with both hands, like he didn't want it to end. After a while, the diner got quiet. The lights were dimmed, and the last few customers left. Emily went back to Ethan's table. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "It's getting late. Are you sure someone's coming for you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a little phone from his pocket and stared at it. The screen lit up. It was ringing. He pressed it to his ear. "Dad," he said. Then, after a few seconds, his face fell. "Okay, I'll wait." He hung up and placed the phone on the table, his lip trembling. Emily's heart broke. She sat down across from him again. "Sometimes grown-ups forget things, Ethan. But it's not your fault, okay?" He sniffled and wiped his eyes. "He said he was going to come. I'm sure he will," she said gently. "How about I bring you another hot chocolate while you wait?" Ethan nodded, and she hurried to the counter. The manager shook his head disapprovingly, but she ignored him. When she turned back with the drink, she noticed Ethan was looking out the window. A black SUV had just pulled up outside. Emily felt a wave of relief. Maybe that was his dad. But when she looked back at Ethan, his face was pale again. He grabbed his small backpack, jumped off the booth, and ran toward the door before she could stop him. "Ethan, wait." She called out, but he was already gone, disappearing into the night. Emily stood frozen, unsure what to do. She ran outside, but the SUV was gone too. The street was quiet, except for the sound of a car in the distance. Her heart was pounding as she looked up and down the road. There was no sign of him. She walked back inside slowly, trying to make sense of what had just happened. When she turned to clear the table, she noticed something on the seat. It was a small silver wristwatch. It looked expensive, too expensive for a child. The strap was leather, the glass spotless, the back was engraved with some initials she didn't recognize. Emily picked it up carefully. It was warm from his wrist. She whispered to herself, "Ethan," and felt a strange chill run through her. She slipped the watch into her apron pocket, thinking she'd keep it safe in case he came back for it. But deep down, she knew this wasn't over. Something about that boy in the SUV didn't feel right as she locked up the diner that night. She couldn't stop thinking about his sad eyes, his trembling hands, and how alone he looked sitting in that corner booth. Emily didn't know it yet, but the small act of kindness she showed that night was about to change her life forever. The next morning, Emily woke up tired but couldn't stop thinking about the little boy from the diner. She kept seeing his small face, his scared eyes, and the way he ran out into the night. She had barely slept. The sound of the diner door closing behind him kept replaying in her mind. She wondered if he was okay, if he found his father, why he had looked so frightened when that black SUV stopped outside. Her apartment was small and quiet. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbor's radio playing softly through the wall. Her mother was still asleep in the next room. Emily tiptoed around, made a cup of instant coffee, and sat by the window. She took the silver watch from her bag and turned it over in her hand. It was heavy, not like a cheap toy watch. The engraving on the back caught the light, 2 letters, DH, written in a fancy script. "Who are you, Ethan?" She whispered. She thought about calling the police station to report the watch, but something stopped her. She didn't even know the boy's last name. All she knew was that his father drove a big black car and didn't show up when his son needed him. Emily sighed, tucked the watch back into her bag, and got ready for work. She didn't want to be late. Her manager would have another reason to yell at her when she reached the diner. The morning rush had already started. The smell of bacon and coffee filled the air. Emily tied her apron and went to work, forcing herself to smile and greet customers. But her mind wasn't there. Every time the door opened, she looked up, half expecting to see that little boy walk in again at around 10 o'clock. She mentioned the boy to her coworker Lisa while they were refilling sugar containers. "There was this kid here last night," Emily said quietly. "He was all alone. Said his name was Ethan. I tried to help him, but he ran off when some car showed up." Lisa raised an eyebrow. That's weird. Did you call someone? I didn't know what to say, Emily admitted. He left so fast. But he dropped this. She took the watch out and showed it to her. Lisa whistled. Wow, that's not cheap. That's the kind of watch rich people wear. Look at that logo. Emily squinted. There was a small symbol under the engraving, 2 wings with a circle in the middle. Lisa frowned, thinking, I've seen that before. Wait, yeah. It's on that building downtown Harrison Industries, isn't it? Emily's heart gave a small jump. Harrison. Like David Harrison. Lisa nodded. You know, the billionaire guy who's always on the news? Owns like half the city. Emily laughed nervously. No way. That kid can't be his son. But after Lisa went to take an order, Emily couldn't stop thinking about it. The initials matched, DH, and she remembered how clean and new the boy's clothes were, even if they were wrinkled. His small phone looked expensive too. Could it really be possible? During her short break, Emily sat in the staff room and looked up David Harrison's son Ethan on her phone. The first thing that popped up was a photo of a tall man in a suit holding hands with a small boy. The boy had the same shy eyes, the same soft brown hair, the same little face that had sat in her booth last night. Her heart pounded. It was him. She read the short article. David Harrison was one of the richest men in the state. His company built luxury apartments and tech systems. The article said he had a son from his first marriage, Ethan Harrison, and that he kept his family life very private. There were no recent photos. Emily felt a wave of worry. What if the boy had run away? What if something bad had happened at home? Emily. The manager's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. Break's over. Let's move. She quickly locked her phone and went back to work. But all day her thoughts kept drifting. She replayed the night in her head, the boy's trembling voice. His bruised arm, the way he said his dad was busy. When her shift ended, she slipped the watch back into her bag and walked home through the cool evening air. The streets were quiet and the streetlights glowed faintly. She couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on. Maybe she should call the number for lost property. Maybe she should contact the company. But what if they accused her of lying? Who would believe a waitress from a small-town diner? At home, her mother was sitting on the couch, knitting quietly. You look worried, her mother said softly. Everything okay at work? Emily hesitated. I met a boy last night. He was alone, crying. I tried to help him, but he left before I could make sure he was safe. Her mother's face softened. You have such a big heart, Em. But sometimes you can't save everyone. Emily smiled faintly, but her stomach still felt heavy. She excused herself and went to her room. She placed the watch on her nightstand and stared at it for a long time before finally lying down. She told herself she'd decide what to do tomorrow. But tomorrow came with something she never expected. The next morning, she woke up to her mother knocking on her door. Emily, someone's outside for you, she said, sounding confused. Emily rubbed her eyes and sat up. Outside? Who? I don't know. There's a car. A big one. It looks like a limo. Emily frowned, thinking she must have heard wrong. A limo? She quickly threw on her jacket and went to the window. Her heart skipped a beat. Parked right outside their small apartment building was a long, shiny, black limousine. The windows were tinted, and 2 men in dark suits stood by the doors. What in the world? She whispered. Her mother came beside her, worried. Did you do something? No. Emily said quickly, though she wasn't sure anymore. Before she could think, there was a knock at the door. One of the men in suits was standing there, calm and polite. He looked like someone out of a movie, tall, serious, with an earpiece in his ear. Miss Emily Turner? He asked. Emily froze. Yes. He gave a small nod. Mr. Harrison would like to speak with you. She blinked. Mr. Harrison. David Harrison, he clarified. He asked that we escort you to his residence. It's regarding a matter from last night. Emily's heart started racing. The boy. She whispered before she could stop herself. The man didn't react, but his tone stayed professional. Mr. Harrison will explain everything. We can take you there now. Her mother looked alarmed. "Emily, what's going on?" I don't know," she said honestly. "But I think it's about that boy I told you about." The men didn't look threatening, but the situation felt unreal. Emily grabbed her bag and the watch, unsure if she was doing the right thing. The man held the car door open for her. She hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The limo smelled like leather and expensive perfume. The seats were soft, and the glass between the driver and the back was tinted. As the car pulled away, Emily stared out the window at her neighborhood, fading into the distance. Her hands were shaking slightly. She clutched the silver watch in her lap. Maybe she was being thanked. Maybe she was in trouble. She didn't know. All she knew was that something important was about to happen. And it all started because she couldn't walk away from a crying little boy who just needed someone to care. The limousine moved smoothly through the city streets, while Emily sat silently in the back seat, clutching her small purse. Her heart thudded so loud she could almost hear it. She kept wondering what was going to happen. The man in the front seat didn't say a word, and she didn't dare ask questions. Every few minutes, she looked out the window and saw tall buildings. Then trees, then big iron gates, as the car turned into a long driveway. When the car finally stopped, Emily's breath caught in her throat. The mansion in front of her looked like something from a movie. It was huge, with marble columns, tall glass windows, and a fountain in the front yard that sparkled under the sunlight. A few gardeners worked silently near the flower beds. 2 guards stood near the entrance. One of the men opened the car door for her. "This way, Miss Turner," he said in a calm, practiced voice. Emily stepped out carefully, her worn shoes sinking slightly into the clean gravel path. She felt out of place immediately. Her clothes were simple black jeans and a plain jacket she wished she had at least combed her hair. Everything here was too perfect, too quiet. Inside, the mansion was even grander. The floors were shiny like mirrors, and the ceiling was high with crystal lights that looked like frozen rain. Expensive paintings hung on the walls, and the smell of fresh flowers filled the air. Emily had never seen anything like it. The man guided her through a long hallway until they reached a room with tall glass doors. He opened one and motioned for her to step inside. David Harrison was standing by the window when she entered. He turned slowly, and Emily immediately recognized him from the pictures she had seen online. He was tall, dressed in a dark suit, with gray at his temples and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything, "Miss Turner," he said politely, his voice deep and calm. "Please, have a seat." Emily hesitated, then sat down on the edge of the large sofa. Her hands were shaking slightly as she tried to smile. "Mr. Harrison, I'm not sure why I'm here," she said softly. He gave a small nod. "I imagine this must be confusing for you." He walked to the table, picked up a file, and then looked at her again. "You met my son, Ethan, yesterday evening." Emily froze. "Yes, sir. He came into the diner alone. He looked upset, so I tried to help him. I didn't know who he was until later." David Harrison's face softened for the first time. "You did more than most people would. Ethan told me everything." Emily blinked in surprise. "He did?" The billionaire nodded and took a deep breath. "He ran away from home yesterday afternoon. There was a disagreement with his stepmother. My son can be sensitive, and sometimes our house feels too cold, too formal for a child. He was scared. You were kind to him when he needed it most." Emily felt a mix of relief and worry. "He was waiting for you. He said you were busy." David sighed quietly and sat across from her. "Yes, I was. I was in a meeting that I shouldn't have prioritized over my son. By the time I realized he was missing, he was already gone. We searched all evening." Emily thought of the black SUV. "I saw a car outside the diner. I thought it was his family, but he ran away before I could talk to anyone." "That was my security team," Harrison said. "He got scared when they arrived. He must have thought they were coming to punish him." Emily's heart hurt a little hearing that. The poor boy had been terrified. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I should have done more." The man shook his head. "You did more than enough. You gave him comfort when no one else did. He told me how you spoke to him, how you gave him pancakes and hot chocolate. He said you made him feel safe. Emily's eyes stung. He's a sweet kid. He just looks so lonely. Harrison looked down at his hands for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. I'm ashamed to admit that my son has probably spent more time with nannies and guards than with me. His mother passed away when he was 4. Since then, I've tried to fill the silence with work. I thought giving him everything money could buy would make up for it. Emily didn't know what to say. The man in front of her was one of the richest people in the country. Yet he sounded broken. I never thought a waitress from a small-town diner would teach me something about fatherhood, he said with a faint smile. But you did. Emily's cheeks turned pink. I didn't do anything special, sir. I just treated him like I would any child. Exactly, he said. That's what made the difference. There was a pause, and then Harrison stood up. He wants to see you again, you know. He hasn't stopped asking since last night. He said you made the best pancakes in the world. Emily laughed softly. Well, that's sweet of him. He's in the garden right now, Harrison said. Would you like to see him? Emily hesitated. She didn't want to intrude, but she also wanted to make sure the boy was okay. If it's all right with you, yes. I'd like that. Harrison smiled slightly and nodded to the guard near the door. Please take Miss Turner to the garden. The guard led her through a set of glass doors that opened to a large, sunny backyard. It looked like a park, green lawns, white benches, tall oak trees swaying gently in the wind. There, sitting on a swing set, was Ethan. When he saw her, his face lit up instantly. He jumped off the swing and ran toward her. Emily, he shouted, his voice full of joy. Emily bent down just in time for him to wrap his small arms around her. She hugged him back tightly, feeling a lump rise in her throat. Hey, buddy, she said softly. I'm so glad you're okay. I've told my dad about you. He said proudly. I told him how you helped me and gave me pancakes even when your boss was mean. Emily laughed through her tears. You told him that part too, huh? Ethan nodded seriously. You were nice. Nobody else talked to me. I thought I was going to be in trouble. It did scare me when you ran out like that, she said gently. I was worried. He looked down at his shoes. I'm sorry. It's okay, she said. You're safe now. That's what matters. From a distance, David Harrison watched them quietly from the patio. For the first time in a long while, he saw his son really laughing. When Emily turned around, Harrison gave her a small nod of thanks. She understood what it meant. After a few minutes, a woman came out to say that Ethan needed to rest. The boy hugged Emily one more time before going inside. Promise you'll visit again? He asked. Emily smiled. I promise. When she turned back to leave, Harrison walked toward her. Miss Turner, he said, I can't thank you enough. You reminded my son and me of something money can't buy. Emily didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. I'm glad he's all right. That's all I wanted. As she walked back toward the limo, she felt like she was floating. Everything that had happened in the past 2 days felt like a dream. When the car drove her home, she looked out the window and thought about how strange life could be. Yesterday, she was serving coffee to strangers. And now she had met a billionaire and his son. But deep down, Emily knew something had changed not just for them, but for her too. She had always believed small acts of kindness didn't matter much in the big picture. But now she understood that sometimes even the smallest kindness could reach the most unexpected hearts. Emily couldn't stop thinking about what had happened that day. Even after she returned home from the mansion, her mind kept replaying everything the way Ethan had smiled when he saw her. The warmth in his hug and the quiet gratitude in David Harrison's eyes. It all felt unreal, like something out of a story rather than her ordinary life. She sat by the window that night, watching the streetlights flicker and thinking about how much a small act of kindness had changed things. The next morning, when she went back to work, her coworkers were full of curiosity. Lisa cornered her as soon as she walked in. Okay, spill it. Who were those men in suits? The whole street saw that limo yesterday. What's going on, Emily? Emily tried to play it cool, but her cheeks turned red. It's nothing crazy. Just something about that boy from the other night. His father wanted to thank me. Lisa stared at her. Thank you. Emily, billionaires don't send limos just to say thank you. What did you do? Save his life? Emily laughed awkwardly and shook her head. No, I just gave him pancakes. Her manager, Mr. Coleman, overheard them and frowned. You gave away free food again? Emily froze. Well, yes, but nothing, he snapped. We don't run a charity here, Emily. Shh. She clenched her jaw, but didn't argue. There was no point. He would never understand that sometimes kindness mattered more than money. All through her shift, she felt distracted. Every time the diner door opened, she half expected to see Ethan again. But the day passed. Normally people came, ate, complained, and left. When she was wiping tables at the end of her shift, she noticed a black car parked quietly across the street. Her heart skipped a beat. But this one wasn't a limo. It looked like a normal sedan. Still, she couldn't help but feel watched. Before she could think more about it, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Mr. Harrison would like to meet with you again this evening if you're available. A car will be sent for you at 6 p.m. Her hands trembled a little as she read it. She typed back a quick reply. Yes, I'll be ready. At exactly 6, another car arrived. It wasn't as fancy as the limo, but still too luxurious for someone like her. She climbed in quietly, nervous but curious. The ride was short this time. When they reached the mansion, the sun was beginning to set, turning the sky pink and gold. Inside, everything looked the same as before, beautiful and grand. But there was a sense of calm this time. One of the staff led her through a side hallway and into a smaller sitting room. The room had bookshelves, a fireplace, and a soft glow from a lamp in the corner. It felt warmer, more personal. David Harrison was sitting by the fireplace reading something. When she entered, he stood up immediately and smiled politely. Miss Turner. Thank you for coming, of course, she said nervously. I hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, he said. Please, sit. She took a seat. Still feeling out of place in such an elegant room, Harrison poured her a cup of tea from a silver pot and handed it to her. I wanted to speak with you properly, he said. Yesterday was quite emotional for everyone. I didn't get the chance to thank you the way I wanted to. Emily shook her head. You really don't need to thank me, sir. I didn't do anything special. He smiled slightly. You did something very few people do anymore. You noticed someone's pain and didn't look away. That means more than you realize. She lowered her eyes, not knowing how to respond. He continued. After you left yesterday, Ethan wouldn't stop talking about you. He asked if we could visit your diner this weekend. He even drew a picture of you and him eating pancakes together. Emily laughed softly. That's adorable. He's such a sweet kid, Harrison said, but there was sadness in his tone. And I'm ashamed that I've let my work take me so far away from him. I built all of this thinking it would make his life better. But he doesn't need mansions or money. He just needs time, attention, and warmth. You reminded me of that. Emily looked at him, surprised by his honesty. You're a good father, Mr. Harrison. You're trying now. That's what matters. He smiled faintly. I hope so. I want to fix what's broken between us. And I'd like to offer you something, Emily. She frowned slightly. Offer me? Yes. He set down his cup and leaned forward. I own a small cafe in the city part of our company's hospitality chain. It's well run, but it lacks something. Heart, maybe? I think you could bring that. I'd like to offer you the position of manager. Better pay, benefits, and flexible hours, so you can still care for your mother. Emily stared at him, speechless. Wait, to want me to manage one of your cafes? Me. He nodded calmly. I've already spoken to the current staff. You'd start next week if you're willing. Her mouth fell open. Mr. Harrison, I don't know what to say. I don't have a degree or fancy training. I just work at a small diner. He smiled kindly. That's exactly why I want you. You understand real people. You treat them with kindness. That's something you can't teach. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. I don't even know how to thank you. He shook his head.
No need.
Consider it my way of saying thank you for what you did for my son and for reminding me what truly matters. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly in the background. Emily felt something warm spreading in her chest, a mix of disbelief and joy. Finally, she said softly, "I'll do my best. I promise." "I know you will," he said. "And Emma Lathan will be thrilled to hear you'll still be part of our lives in some way. He's already planning to visit your cafe once it opens." They both laughed at that, and the tension in the room faded. For the first time, Emily felt comfortable sitting across from the billionaire. He wasn't as intimidating now, just a father trying to do better. Before she left, Ethan came running into the room, his hair messy and his hands full of crayons. "Emily, you came back," he shouted happily. Emily bent down and hugged him tightly. "Hey there, buddy. I heard you've been drawing me," he grinned and handed her a picture. It showed her with a big smile and a plate of pancakes. Above it, in messy handwriting, it said, "My favorite waitress." Her heart melted. "This is beautiful, Ethan. I'm going to keep it forever." David watched the scene quietly, his eyes soft with pride. "See, Ethan? I told you she'd like it. Can she come to my birthday?" Ethan asked suddenly. David chuckled. "I think that can be arranged." Emily promised she'd come if she could. When it was time to go, Ethan waved from the window until her car disappeared down the long driveway. On the ride home, Emily held the drawing carefully in her lap, afraid to wrinkle it. The night lights of the city blurred outside the window as she thought about how quickly life could change. Yesterday, she had been struggling to pay rent. Today, she was being offered a job by a billionaire because she cared about a lonely child. When she reached home, she told her mother everything. Her mother's eyes filled with tears of pride. "See, Emily? Good things come to those who do good without expecting anything in return." Emily smiled softly, looking down at the drawing in her hands. She knew her life was about to change not because of luck, but because she chose kindness when no one else did. And somewhere in a big mansion across town, a little boy named Ethan was falling asleep, clutching the memory of a waitress who made him feel loved when he needed it most. The morning after her meeting at the mansion, Emily felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Her life had changed so quickly, she could hardly believe it. Just a few days ago, she had been working long shifts at the small diner, worrying about rent and her mother's medicine. Now, she had an unexpected job offer from a billionaire and had met a little boy who had made a deep mark on her heart. She got ready carefully, choosing simple but neat clothes, not wanting to look too casual in her new role. Her mother watched her, eyes wide with pride. "Emily, I can't believe all this is happening. You've always been kind, and now it's paying off in a way I never imagined." Emily smiled softly. "It's crazy, isn't it? But it doesn't feel like luck. I just did what I thought was right." Her mother nodded, squeezing her hand. "That's my girl." When she arrived at the mansion later that day, she noticed that Ethan was already waiting for her in the garden. He had a small ball in his hands and a big smile on his face. When he saw her, he ran as fast as his little legs could carry him and threw himself into her arms. "Emily," he shouted, hugging her tightly. Emily laughed and hugged him back, careful not to lift him too high. "Hey, buddy. I see someone's ready to play," he nodded eagerly. "I drew you something." He ran toward a small table with a pile of papers and handed her one of the drawings. It showed her serving pancakes to a smiling boy in a bright diner. Above it, in uneven letters, it read, "My favorite waitress." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, this is amazing. I'm going to keep it forever," he grinned proudly. "I want you to come to my birthday." Emily laughed. "I think that can be arranged." From the patio, David Harrison watched them quietly. He had a soft expression on his face, one Emily had never seen before. There was pride and relief there. He walked down toward them. "Emily," he said gently, "I can't thank you enough for what you've done for Ethan. You reminded him of something he was missing, someone who cares. And you reminded me too." Emily shook her head. "I didn't do anything special. I just treated him like a kid who needed someone to care." David smiled faintly. "Exactly. That's why it mattered so much." Ethan tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Can we play a game now?" She smiled and nodded. Of course, let's play. They spent the afternoon in the garden. Emily taught Ethan how to throw a ball without it bouncing too far. They ran around, laughed, and shared small stories about their days. She realized how much the boy had been missing normal childhood moments, simple things like laughter, play, and attention. Later, as they sat on a bench under a large oak tree, Emily noticed Ethan looking thoughtful. "What is it, Ethan?" she asked. He looked up at her eyes, serious for a moment. "I'm happy you're here. I don't want you to go." Emily felt a lump in her throat. "I'm not going anywhere, buddy. I promised I'd come back, and I will. We'll see each other a lot." David Harrison joined them and knelt beside the boy. "Ethan, you've had a rough few days, but Emily is here to help, and we're going to make sure you feel safe and happy." Ethan smiled shyly and leaned against his father. Emily watched the moment quietly, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had never expected to become part of someone's life in such a personal way. And yet here she was, sharing a special bond with a child and his father. After a while, David Harrison turned to Emily. "I'd like to make something official," he said. "I want you to manage one of our cafes, starting next week. You'll have support from staff and full benefits, but most importantly, you'll bring your heart and care into the work." Emily felt tears welling up again. I don't know what to say." "I'm so grateful, sir. I promise to do my best." He nodded. "I know you will. And I want you to know, this isn't just a job. It's a way for you to help others the way you helped Ethan. You'll make a difference." The afternoon sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden. Ethan sat with a small pile of drawings, showing her all the pictures he had made. Some were of their game with the ball, some of him laughing, and one of him and Emily standing together outside the diner. Emily carefully collected them all, promising to keep them safe. When it was time for her to leave, Ethan hugged her tightly. "Come back soon, okay?" he said. "I will," she said, holding back tears. "I promise." As she walked back toward the car, David Harrison came beside her. "You've given Ethan something he's been missing for a long time," he said quietly. "And you've reminded me what matters most." "Thank you, Emily." Emily smiled softly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I just wanted him to feel safe." "You did more than that," he said. "You gave him hope." The drive back home was quiet, but Emily felt lighter than she had in months. She held the drawings in her lap and smiled, realizing how much a small act of kindness could ripple outward, changing lives in ways she could never have imagined. Back at her apartment, she showed her mother the drawings and explained everything: the diner, Ethan, the mansion, the job offer. Her mother's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Emily, this is incredible. I'm so proud of you. You always have a kind heart, and now it's leading you to wonderful things." Emily nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She looked at the silver watch Ethan had left behind at the diner and smiled. That small token had started everything. But it was her choice to care, to pay attention, and to act with kindness that had truly made the difference. Over the next few weeks, Emily started her new job at the cafe. She trained the staff, organized the kitchen, and brought her warmth into the workplace. The regular customers noticed a difference, and Emily treated everyone with care, and the cafe felt welcoming and lively. Meanwhile, she continued to visit Ethan, helping him with small projects, playing games, and sharing laughter. Each time she came, he ran to her with a smile that lit up the room. Emily realized that while her life had changed in material ways, the true reward was in the relationships she had built, especially with the little boy who had taught her that a kind heart could touch the lives of many, including a billionaire father and his lonely child. One evening, after a long day at the cafe, Emily returned home and sat by her window. Holding one of Ethan's drawings, she thought about how unpredictable life could be. Just a few days ago, she had been serving tables, unsure how she would pay her bills. Now, she had a job she loved, a chance to make a difference, and a special bond with a little boy who had changed her life as much as she had changed his. As she looked at the drawing, Emily whispered softly to herself, Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change everything. She smiled, feeling content, hopeful, and ready for whatever came next. And somewhere in the big mansion across town, Ethan slept peacefully, clutching the memory of the waitress who had made him feel loved, safe, and seen for the very first time.